Kehoe stood in the center of the Great Hall, feeling very small. The Galactic Council chamber was huge, with walls that seemed to go up forever. All around him, alien beings sat in their floating chairs, looking down at him with cold eyes. Some had blue skin and no hair. Others looked like walking machines made of metal. A few had tentacles instead of arms. The human ambassador wore his best uniform, but it felt cheap next to all the shiny alien technology. He had come here to speak for Earth and all of humanity. Now he wished he was back home in Seoul, eating. His mother's cooking. "The human speaks now," said the Valian Prime Speaker. Her voice sounded like ice breaking. She had pale blue skin and silver eyes that never blinked. "Tell us why your species should join the Galactic Council." Kehoe cleared his throat. "Honored members, humans have much to offer. We are creative, adaptable, and emotional," interrupted a Nexari delegate. The creature looked like a tall gray robot with glowing green lights for eyes. "Your species shows dangerous emotional responses to simple problems." "We have studied your people," added a Corveth representative. This alien was covered in dark scales and spoke without moving its mouth. "You cry when sad. You laugh when happy. You make decisions based on feelings instead of logic. This is primitive behavior." Kehoe felt his face getting hot. He was angry, but he tried to stay calm. "Emotions help us understand each other. They make us stronger as a group." The aliens made sounds that might have been laughing, but it was cold and mechanical. The Valian Prime Speaker raised one long, thin hand. "Emotions make you weak and unpredictable. A proper civilization uses only logic and reason." "Your people fight wars over hurt feelings," said another alien. "You waste resources on art and music. You cry over dead pets. These are the actions of children, not adults ready for galactic citizenship." In the gallery above, Yanwu watched the trial with growing anger. She was a psychologist who had studied alien behavior for years. She knew how wrong they were about humans, but no one would listen to her. She gripped the rail in front of her as the aliens continued their attack on humanity. "We have made our decision," announced the Prime Speaker. "Humanity is too emotionally unstable to join the galactic community. You will remain in your home system until you evolve beyond these primitive responses." Kehoe stepped forward. "You're making a mistake. Our emotions are not weakness." "Silence." The Prime Speaker's voice echoed through the chamber. "We have seen your history. Wars caused by anger. Art created from pain. Love that makes people do stupid things. This is not the behavior of an advanced species." "The decision is final," said the Nexari delegate. "You have one standard galactic year to remove all emotional responses from your species. Use drugs, surgery, genetic modification. We do not care how you do it. Return when you can think with pure logic like civilized beings." The Corveth representative leaned forward. "If you refuse this generous offer, you will be permanently blocked from leaving your solar system. No trade, no contact, no future with the galaxy." Kehoe felt his heart breaking. All of humanity's dreams of joining the stars were being crushed, because the aliens thought feelings made them weak. "Please, just give us a chance to show you." "There is nothing to show," the Prime Speaker said coldly. "Emotions are a disease that holds back intelligent life. We removed ours thousands of years ago and became perfect. You can do the same, or remain forever alone." The other aliens nodded in agreement. They all looked the same now that Kehoe really watched them, cold, empty, like beautiful machines pretending to be alive. Not one of them showed any real expression or genuine reaction to anything. "The trial is over," announced the Prime Speaker. "Human Ambassador Kehoe will return to Earth with our terms. The Galactic Council has spoken." As the aliens began to float away on their chairs, Kehoe stood alone in the center of the Great Hall. He had failed. All of humanity was counting on him, and he had failed. Back on Earth, Dr. Hansol watched the trial broadcast in her laboratory. She was one of Earth's top experts on alien psychology, and she had been studying the Council species for years. As she watched the aliens dismiss Human emotion is weakness, she began to smile. They have no idea what they just did, she whispered to herself. Her assistant, a young researcher named Junseo, looked confused. What do you mean, Doctor? They just rejected us completely. Hansol turned to face him, and Junseo was surprised to see excitement in her eyes. They showed us their weakness, Junseo. They told us exactly how to defeat them. I don't understand. Hansol pulled up files on her computer screen showing brain scans and behavior studies of the alien species. Look at this data. The Valians removed their ability to feel doubt or uncertainty. The Nixari eliminated intuition and gut feelings. The Corvith destroyed their capacity for empathy and connection. So? That makes them stronger, doesn't it? No, Hansol said, her smile growing wider. It makes them blind. They can't understand us because they cut out the parts of themselves that would let them see what we really are. Junseo still looked confused, so Hansol continued. Think about it. They see our emotions and call them weakness, but they can't comprehend what emotions actually do for us. They can't predict us, can't manipulate us, can't even properly defend against us because they don't understand how emotional intelligence works. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. People were going about their daily lives, laughing, crying, loving, hoping, dreaming. All the things the aliens thought made humans weak. They want to play psychological games with us, Hansol said quietly. They want to force us to become empty shells like them. But they don't realize that humans are the best at psychological warfare in the entire galaxy. What are you planning? Junseo asked nervously. Hansol turned back to him with a look that made him shiver. I'm going to show them what happens when you try to psychological manipulation on a species that weaponizes empathy. They think emotions make us weak? Wait until they see what human emotions can do to minds that have forgotten how to feel. She began typing rapidly on her computer, pulling up files on alien psychology, social structures, and behavioral patterns. Call the other department heads, Junseo. Tell them we're starting a new project. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy why you should never underestimate human emotions. As Junseo hurried away to make the calls, Hansol looked back at the screen showing the alien council members. They looked so confident, so superior, so certain that their logic-based civilization was perfect. You have no idea what's coming, she whispered to their images. You wanted to play mind games with humanity? Game on. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council rejected humanity. Dr. Hansol now led a secret team of Earth's best minds in a hidden facility beneath the Swiss mountains. The project had no official name, but everyone called it Mirror because they were trying to reflect alien psychology back at itself. Doyan entered the main laboratory carrying a stack of decoded alien transmissions. She used to work for the military, getting information from prisoners of war. Now she studied alien minds instead. I have the latest intercepts from the Valian homeworld, she said, setting the files on Hansol's desk. What did you find? Hansol asked, not looking up from her computer screen showing alien brain scans. Something interesting. Their children are asking questions that adults can't answer. Doyan pulled out a translated conversation between a young Valian and her teacher. The child asked why she felt strange when watching human entertainment broadcasts. The teacher had no response because Valians don't have words for feelings anymore. Taemin looked up from his workstation where he was analyzing alien social structures. He was an expert in how different cultures worked, and he had been studying alien societies for months. That matches what I found in Nixari records. Their young people are having what they call processing errors when exposed to human content. Hansol finally looked up, interested. Processing errors? They mean confusion, curiosity, wonder, all the things that normal growing minds experience. But adult Nixari don't know how to explain these feelings because they had theirs removed centuries ago. The laboratory door opened and Mi-young walked in, still wearing the dirty clothes from her illegal trading ship. She was one of the few humans who regularly snuck into alien space to trade goods. Officially, she didn't exist. Unofficially, she provided the team with crucial information about how aliens really lived. I just got back from Corvith territory, Mi-young said, dropping into a chair. You're not going to believe what I saw. Tell us, Han Sol said. Mi Young pulled out a small recording device. I was on their main trading station when a human music file accidentally played over the public communication system. It was just a simple song about missing someone you love. She pressed play, and the team heard a recording of confused alien voices speaking in their clicking language. Du Yan translated as they listened. They're asking each other what the pressure in their chest cavity means. They're describing physical symptoms of sadness, but they don't have words for the emotion itself. How did they react? Taemin asked. Panic, Mi Young said with a grin. Complete panic. They shut down the entire station and called for medical teams. They thought they were having some kind of disease outbreak. Han Sol leaned back in her chair thinking. Over the past months, her team had learned terrible and wonderful things about the aliens who thought they were so superior. The Valians had used genetic engineering to remove doubt and uncertainty from their minds. Every Valian was absolutely sure about everything, all the time. They couldn't change their opinions or learn from mistakes. The Nixari had gone further. They had eliminated intuition, gut feelings, and the ability to make quick emotional judgments. Everything had to be analyzed through pure logic. They couldn't understand art, couldn't appreciate beauty, couldn't even tell when someone was lying to them. The Corvette were the worst. They had destroyed their ability to form real connections with others. Every relationship was purely functional. They had no concept of love, friendship, or loyalty beyond what was logically useful. Their families were just business arrangements. Show them the brain scans, Do-yeon said to Han Sol. Han Sol pulled up images on the main screen. This is a human brain when experiencing different emotions. The scans showed activity in many areas, creating complex, beautiful patterns of neural firing. And this is a Valian brain trying to process the same emotional stimuli. The alien brain scan looked broken. Large areas showed no activity at all. Other regions fired chaotically, unable to make sense of emotional input. It looked like a computer trying to run software it wasn't designed for. They're not more advanced than us, Taemin said quietly. They're damaged. Exactly, Han Sol agreed. They think they evolved beyond emotion, but they actually broke themselves. They removed the parts of their minds that let them understand others, predict behavior, and adapt to new situations. Mi Young leaned forward. So what's the plan? How do we use this? Han Sol stood and walked to a whiteboard covered in diagrams and alien social charts. We're going to do something they'll never see coming. We're going to help them feel again. That sounds nice, Do-yeon said slowly. But how is that going to help us? Han Sol turned to face her team, and they all saw something dangerous in her smile. Because when you've built a civilization on the foundation of not feeling anything, what happens when people suddenly start feeling everything? The team looked at each other as they began to understand. Their societies will collapse, Taemin whispered. Their decision-making systems will break down, Do-yeon added. Their people will question everything they've been told, Mi Young finished. Now you're getting it, Han Sol said. We're not going to attack them with weapons or armies. We're going to give them back their emotions. And when beings who haven't felt anything for thousands of years suddenly experience fear, doubt, love, and confusion all at once. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood. But how? Do-yeon asked. We can't exactly perform surgery on entire alien species. Han Sol turned back to the whiteboard. We don't need surgery. We need stories, music, art, drama. All the things they think are useless human weaknesses. We're going to flood their space with human emotional content disguised as trade goods, entertainment, and cultural exchanges. Will that really work? Taemin asked. Think about it, Han Sol explained. Their brains still have the hardware for emotions. They just shut off the software. But young aliens are already starting to feel things when exposed to human content. The pathways are still there, just dormant. Mi Young was grinning now. So we wake them up. We wake them up, Han Sol confirmed. And then we watch their perfect logical civilizations crumble when their people remember how to doubt, how to hope, how to love, and how to fear. She began writing names and plans on the whiteboard. We'll need writers, actors, musicians, and artists. We'll need people who understand how to craft emotional experiences that can awaken dormant feelings. This is psychological warfare on a galactic scale, Doyen said with admiration. It's more than that, Han Sol replied. It's the most human thing we could possibly do. They wanted us to stop being emotional. Instead, we're going to make the entire galaxy feel what we feel. The team spent the rest of the day planning their campaign. They would target the young first, then slowly work their way up through alien society. Every story would be carefully crafted to trigger specific emotional responses. Every song would be designed to awaken dormant neural pathways. As the meeting ended, Mi-young asked the question they were all thinking. What if this actually works? What if we succeed in making them feel again? Han Sol looked out the window at the stars they could no longer reach. Then we'll have given the galaxy the greatest gift possible. We'll have made them human. Jae-won had always been good at reading people. As Earth's former top diplomat, he could tell what someone was thinking just by watching their face. Now he used that skill for something completely different, psychological warfare on a galactic scale. He sat in his new office, reviewing the first batch of cultural exchange materials that would be sent to alien worlds. These weren't random human stories and songs. Each piece was carefully chosen and sometimes modified to target specific weaknesses in alien psychology. Sora knocked on his door and entered. She had been an actress before joining the project, famous for making people cry during her performances. Now she was learning to make aliens feel things they had never felt before. The children's stories are ready, she said, carrying a datapad full of files. Show me, Jae-won said. Sora pulled up the first story on the screen. It looked simple, just a tale about a young alien who finds a lost pet and returns it to its family. But Jae-won knew every word had been chosen carefully by their team of writers and psychologists. The story starts with loneliness, Sora explained. Young aliens understand being alone because their societies don't really connect with each other. Then it introduces the concept of caring about someone else's pain. Finally, it shows the joy of helping others even when you get nothing in return. And this will work on them? Dong-ho thinks so. He designed it based on the psychological profiles we have of young Valians. Their brains still have the capacity for empathy, but they've never experienced it before. Dong-ho was their master, storyteller, a writer who understood that humans had always used stories to share emotions and experiences. He had spent months learning how alien minds worked, then crafted tales that would awaken feelings these beings had never known they could. Meanwhile, in another part of the facility, Nari was working on something she called empathy bombs. These were recordings of real human emotional moments, a mother singing to her sick child, soldiers helping wounded enemies, strangers saving people from burning buildings. The key is authenticity, Nari explained to her team. Aliens can detect when emotions are fake because they're so focused on logic, but real human emotions are so pure and strong that even their damaged minds can't ignore them. She had been a psychological warfare specialist in the military, but this was different. Instead of breaking enemy minds, she was trying to heal them. The irony wasn't lost on her. By helping aliens feel again, she would destroy their societies, more completely than any bomb could. The first test came when Mi-young returned from another illegal trading run. She had smuggled the children's stories into an Ixari colony and left them where young aliens could find them. The results came back within days. It's working, Mi-young reported excitedly. The young Nixari who read the stories are asking their parents questions like, why do I feel warm inside when the character helps others? And, what is this water coming from my eyes? Jae-won smiled. The Nixari had no word for tears because they had eliminated the ability to cry centuries ago. But their children were rediscovering it through human stories. What about the adults? Sora asked. Panicking, Mi-young said with satisfaction. They're calling it a logic contamination event. They think human stories contain some kind of virus that damages rational thinking. In a way, they were right. Human emotional content was spreading through young alien populations like a virus, awakening dormant parts of their brains and teaching them to feel things their ancestors had forgotten. Wu Jin, Their analyst who monitored alien communications brought more good news. Productivity in Valian factories is down 15%. Workers are stopping to help each other with problems instead of focusing only on their own tasks. Their supervisors don't understand why. Because they're learning empathy, Nari explained. When you start caring about others, you can't just watch them struggle anymore. The psychological campaign expanded rapidly. Human music began playing, accidentally on alien communication networks. Art installations appeared mysteriously on trade stations. Every piece was designed to trigger specific emotional responses in minds that had never experienced such things. The breakthrough came when Dong Ho created what he called the Mirror series, stories where alien characters experienced human-like emotions for the first time. Instead of human protagonists, these tales featured young Valians discovering doubt, Nexari learning to trust their instincts, and Korveth forming real friendships. "It's brilliant," J1 said after reading the first story. "They can't dismiss it as primitive human weakness because the characters are their own people." The story spread through alien networks faster than any virus. Young aliens shared them secretly, hungry for the emotional experiences their societies had denied them. Adults tried to ban the content, but it was already too late. Sora had been studying alien behavior patterns and made a disturbing discovery. "I don't think their emotional suppression was voluntary," she told the team during their weekly meeting. "What do you mean?" Wu Jin asked. "Look at the historical records Mi Young stole from their archives. The transition from emotional to purely logical societies happened very quickly, within just a few generations. That's not evolution. That's systematic suppression." She pulled up ancient alien artwork on the main screen. The images showed beings that looked like current aliens, but their faces held expressions of joy, sadness, love, and fear. They looked alive in ways that modern aliens didn't. "They were like us once," Nori whispered. "They had emotions, creativity, real connections with each other." "So what happened?" J1 asked. "Someone convinced them that emotions were holding them back," Dong Ho said quietly. "Someone made them believe that feeling was weakness." The team sat in silence as they realized the true scope of what they were dealing with. The alien species hadn't evolved beyond emotions. They had been psychologically damaged on a massive scale. "This changes everything," J1 said finally. "No." Han Sol's voice came from the doorway. She had been listening from outside. "This confirms everything. We're not just fighting for humanity's right to join the galaxy. We're healing wounds that have been festering for thousands of years." She entered the room and looked at each team member. "The question is, are we ready for what happens when billions of beings suddenly remember how to feel after centuries of emotional numbness?" Reports were already coming in from Mi Young's network of human traders. Young aliens were becoming depressed when they learned about all the emotions they had been denied. Others were angry at their societies for lying to them. Some were overwhelmed by feelings they had no words to describe. "Their governments are starting to panic," Mi Young reported. "They're calling human emotional content a psychological weapon and demanding that the Galactic Council take action." "Let them panic," Han Sol said with cold satisfaction. "They wanted to play psychological games with humanity. Now they'll learn why that was the worst possible mistake they could have made." The first phase of Project Mirror was complete. Human emotional content was spreading through alien space like wildfire, awakening feelings that had been dormant for generations. But this was just the beginning. "Phase 2 starts tomorrow," Han Sol announced. "Now we see what happens when entire alien civilizations remember how to doubt, how to question authority, and how to care about each other more than they care about following orders." Yunji stared at the massive display screen showing real-time data from across alien space. Red warning lights flashed as communication intercepts flooded in from every major alien civilization. What had started as a trickle of confused questions from alien children had become a tsunami of psychological chaos. "Status report," she said to her team. As the new director of expanded psychological operations, Yunji commanded twice as many people as the original Mirror project. They needed everyone they could get. Hyun-woo looked up from his workstation, his face pale with exhaustion. He had been monitoring Valian communications for 18 hours straight. It's getting worse or better depending on how you look at it. 3 Valian colonies have completely stopped functioning. What do you mean stopped functioning? Decision paralysis, Hyun-woo explained, pulling up translated reports. For the first time in thousands of years, Valians are experiencing doubt. They can't make choices because they're suddenly aware that they might be wrong. Yoonji read over his shoulder. The reports were full of phrases like uncertainty syndrome and choice confusion. Valian leaders were calling emergency meetings to discuss problems they had no framework to solve. Listen to this. Hyun-woo played an audio file. Even through the translation software, the alien voice sounded lost and frightened. Council leader Vel Noth is asking her advisors, "But what if our decision harms someone?" She's never considered that possibility before. Across the room, Soo-jin was having even more success with the Nexari. Her specialty was psychological misdirection, making people think in circles until they confuse themselves. But with the Nexari, she barely had to try. "They're so easy to manipulate now," she reported with something like pity in her voice. "I sent them a simple human riddle about a box that might or might not contain something valuable. Half their government is still trying to solve it using pure logic." She showed Yoonji the intercepts. Nexari officials were having heated debates about probability, potential outcomes, and risk assessment. But because they had eliminated their intuitive abilities, they couldn't make the logical leap to just open the box and look inside. "They're stuck in analysis loops," Soo-jin continued. "The more they think about the problem, the more complex it becomes. Some of them haven't eaten or slept in days because they can't stop trying to solve it." But it was Minho's work with the Corveth that showed the most dramatic results. He specialized in human empathy and connection, and he had been broadcasting recordings of human families, friendships, and love stories into Corveth space. "You need to see this," Minho said, his voice filled with amazement. He played a video from a Corveth trading station. This was taken yesterday. The video showed 2 adult Corveth, beings who had been emotionally isolated their entire lives, tentatively touching each other's hands. One was crying, though the translation software noted that Corveth had no word for tears. "They're learning what physical affection means," Minho explained. "For the first time in their species' recent history, they're forming bonds that aren't based on utility or logic." The results were catastrophic for Corveth society. Their rigid hierarchical system depended on individuals caring only about their assigned roles. But aliens who were discovering love and friendship couldn't bring themselves to follow orders that hurt others. "Their military is in complete disarray," Minho continued. "Soldiers are refusing to train for combat because they've developed emotional attachments to their supposed enemies. Their concept of us versus them is breaking down." Ji-hai, the overall director of xenopsychological warfare, entered the command center looking both excited and terrified. She had been coordinating with human agents throughout the galaxy, and the reports she brought were almost too incredible to believe. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the room, "I think we've succeeded beyond our wildest dreams and our worst nightmares." She activated the main display, showing a galaxy-wide map with colored regions indicating different levels of psychological disruption. Almost every alien territory was colored red for severe social instability. "The Valian Empire has requested emergency assistance from the Galactic Council," Ji-hai reported. "They're calling it the Doubt Plague, and claiming that human psychological weapons are destroying their ability to govern." "What kind of assistance are they asking for?" Yoonji asked. "They want Council forces to forcibly remove all human emotional content from their territories and to treat infected individuals." Ji-hai's voice was grim. "They're talking about performing emergency surgery to remove emotional capabilities from their own people." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They had known their psychological campaign would disrupt alien societies, but they hadn't expected the aliens to consider mutilating their own people rather than learn to live with emotions. "The Nexari are worse," Ji-hai continued. "They've declared a logic emergency and are requesting permission to build containment facilities for citizens showing signs of intuitive contamination." They want to imprison their own people for learning to feel? Sujin asked in horror. And the Corveth are calling for complete isolation from all human content. They've labeled emotional connection as a social virus that threatens their civilization. Yoonji looked around the room at her team. They had wanted to show the aliens that emotions were not weakness, but the alien response was to double down on their rejection of feeling, rather than accept that they might have been wrong. Ma'am, Hyunwoo said quietly, there's something else. The young aliens who've been exposed to human content, they're not taking this well. He pulled up intercepted messages from across alien space. Young Valians who had learned to doubt were being forced into certainty restoration procedures. Nexari children who had developed intuition were being sent to logic rehabilitation centers. Corveth who had formed friendships were being separated and assigned to different colonies. They're traumatizing their own children rather than admit that emotions might be valuable, Minho said with disgust. No, Yoonji said slowly, a new understanding dawning on her. They can't admit it. Their entire civilization is built on the idea that emotions are primitive and dangerous. If they accept that we were right, everything they've believed for thousands of years becomes a lie. She walked to the main display and stared at the red-colored map. We didn't just challenge their policies. We challenged their fundamental identity as species. We proved that they're not more evolved than humans. We proved that they mutilated themselves in pursuit of an impossible ideal. So what do we do? Jihai asked. Do we stop the campaign? Before Yoonji could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. A priority communication was coming through from space, direct from the Galactic Council. The main screen flickered and showed the familiar face of the Valian Prime speaker. But she looked different now. Her perfect composure was cracked. Her silver eyes showed something that looked almost like fear. Humans of Earth, she said, her voice shaking slightly. We demand immediate cessation of your psychological attacks on Galactic Council member species. Your emotional weapons constitute an act of war against civilized society. Yoonji stepped forward to the communication pickup. Prime Speaker, we have sent nothing but stories, music, and art. If these things are weapons, what does that say about your civilization? You know what you have done, the Prime Speaker accused. You have infected our young with primitive emotional responses. You have disrupted our social order with your chaotic feelings. You have violated the most basic principles of advanced civilization. We have reminded your people what it feels like to be alive, Yoonji replied calmly. The Prime Speaker's mask of control slipped further. For just a moment, Yoonji could see something raw and vulnerable in those alien features. Please, the Prime Speaker whispered, and it was the first real emotion any human had ever seen from her. Please stop. We don't know how to handle what you've awakened in us. The communication ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. The most powerful alien in the galaxy had just begged humanity to stop making her people feel human emotions. My God, Jihai whispered. What have we done? Changmin walked through the same grand halls where Kiho had been humiliated just 1 year earlier. But everything had changed. The floating chairs were empty now. Many of the alien council members sat on simple benches, their perfect technology, abandoned as they struggled with concepts like comfort and preference. The human ambassador carried no briefcase of formal documents. Instead, he held a single datapad containing humanity's response to the galaxy's plea for help. The same species that had once called humans too emotional were now begging for emotional guidance. As he entered the main chamber, Changmin saw scenes that would have been impossible a year ago. The Valian Prime Speaker sat with her head in her hands, experiencing doubt for the first time in her life. Nixari delegates were crying, actually crying, though they had no cultural understanding of what tears meant. Corveth representatives were holding each other's hands, forming the first real emotional bonds their species had known in centuries. Ambassador Changmin, the Prime Speaker said, looking up with eyes that held a mixture of hope and terror. Thank you for coming. Her voice was different now. Gone was the cold, mechanical tone that had dismissed humanity's worth. She sounded vulnerable, uncertain, and paradoxically more alive than she had ever seemed before. Honored members, Chang Min, began, using the same respectful address Kehoe had used. You asked us here to discuss the psychological crisis affecting your civilizations. A Nixari delegate raised a shaking hand. We don't understand what's happening to us. Our people are making decisions based on feelings we don't have names for. Our logic systems are failing because we keep considering outcomes we never cared about before. Like whether our decisions might hurt others? Changmin asked gently. Yes. How did you know? The alien looked confused by his own question. Why does it matter if our efficiency improvements cause some individuals distress? It's illogical to prioritize individual comfort over collective productivity. Behind Changmin, Bitna stepped forward. She was humanity's new chief psychological advisor to the Reformed Council, and she had spent months preparing for this moment. It matters because you're remembering how to care about each other. The part of your mind that creates emotional bonds is waking up. The Corveth representative spoke next, his scaled face wet with tears. Our children are refusing to accept arranged work partnerships. They want to choose their own companions based on something they call feelings. Our social structure is collapsing. Your social structure is healing, Bitna corrected gently. You're learning to form relationships based on genuine connection instead of pure utility. More alien voices joined in, all expressing the same confused desperation. They described young aliens who questioned authority for the first time, workers who refused to perform jobs that felt meaningless, leaders who couldn't make harsh decisions because they suddenly cared about the people those decisions would affect. Changmin listened patiently as each species described their crisis. Finally, he activated his data pad and projected humanity's response onto the chamber's main screen. The human government has consulted with our best psychologists, philosophers, and social scientists, he announced. Our conclusion is simple. You are not experiencing a disease or contamination. You are experiencing recovery from psychological damage that was inflicted on your species thousands of years ago. The chamber erupted in confused voices, but Changmin continued. We've studied your historical records. Your species once had emotions, creativity, and deep social bonds. Someone convinced you to give those up in pursuit of perfect logic. But logic without emotion isn't advanced. It's broken. Insu, representing humanity's new Galactic Psychiatric Coalition, joined Changmin at the center of the chamber. We're offering to help you reintegrate healthy emotional responses with your logical capabilities. Not to make you human, but to make you whole again. How? The Prime Speaker asked. The desperation in her voice was heartbreaking. Education, therapy, and time, Insu explained. We've developed programs to help your people understand and manage emotions they've never experienced. We can teach your leaders how to make decisions that balance logic with empathy. We can help your families learn to love each other again. A young Nexari who had been sitting quietly in the observer section suddenly stood up. I want to learn, she announced, her voice carrying across the chamber. I'm tired of feeling confused and alone. If the humans can help us understand these new feelings, I want to try. Other young aliens throughout the chamber began standing as well, echoing her words. They were the first generation in millennia to experience real emotions, and they were hungry to understand what was happening to them. But not all the responses were positive. An older Valian official stood abruptly. This is madness. We spent thousands of years perfecting our logical systems. You want us to abandon advancement for primitive emotional chaos? We want you to integrate both, Changmin replied calmly. Humans use emotion and logic together. Our feelings help us understand others and make moral decisions. Our logic helps us solve problems and plan for the future. Neither alone is sufficient. The official was about to argue further when something unexpected happened. A young Valian approached him. His own daughter, Changmin realized from the similar facial features. Father, she said quietly, when was the last time you told me you were proud of me? The older Valian stared at her in confusion. Pride is an inefficient emotional response. Your achievements benefit society, which is sufficient. But I wanted you to be proud, his daughter said. tears flowing down her blue cheeks. I wanted to matter to you as an individual, not just as a productive unit. The chamber watched as the old alien's carefully controlled expression began to crack. For the first time in his adult life, he was seeing his daughter as a person with feelings instead of just a role in society. I don't know how to be proud, he admitted, his voice breaking. We removed that capability generations ago. We can teach you, Bitna offered gently. We can help you learn to love your daughter and let her know that she matters to you. Thirk. Scene was repeated throughout the chamber, as family relationships that had been purely functional for centuries suddenly became personal. Parents were seeing their children as individuals. Workers were connecting with colleagues as friends. Leaders were understanding that their decisions affected real people with hopes and fears. Dr. Hansol, who had started the entire psychological campaign, watched from the gallery with quiet satisfaction. Her plan had worked beyond her wildest expectations. But as she looked at the emotional chaos in the chamber below, she felt something she hadn't anticipated: compassion for the aliens who were struggling to understand feelings they had never been taught to manage. The formal session ended with the establishment of the Galactic Emotional Recovery Program. Human psychologists would work with alien specialists to develop treatment protocols for species-wide psychological healing. It would take generations to fully undo the damage, but the process had begun. Later, as the chamber emptied, Chang Min found himself alone with the Valian Prime Speaker. She sat on her simple bench, staring at her hands. I have a question, she said without looking up. Yes? When I begged your people to stop the psychological campaign, I felt something I had never experienced before. It was uncomfortable and made me feel small. What was that? Changmin smiled sadly. That was humility. It's what humans feel when we realize we might be wrong about something important. The Prime Speaker looked up at him with wonder. And humans experience this regularly? Every day. It's how we learn and grow. She was quiet for a long moment. We called you too emotional because we were afraid of what emotions might teach us about ourselves. We were wrong, weren't we? Yes, Changmin said gently. But being wrong isn't a failure. It's an opportunity to become better. The Prime Speaker stood and for the first time in galactic history, bowed to a human representative. Please help us become better. Help us learn to be wrong, to doubt, to hope, and to care about each other. In the months that followed, human counselors spread throughout alien space. Ye Jin, a young psychologist specializing in childhood development, found herself working with alien children who were experiencing emotions for the first time. She watched as young Korveth learned to form friendships as Nexari children developed intuition alongside logic, and as Valian families discovered love. The work was not easy. Many aliens struggled with depression when they realized how emotionally impoverished their lives had been. Others became overwhelmed by feelings they couldn't control. Some older aliens never fully adapted and lived their remaining years in confusion. But for every tragedy, there were dozens of breakthroughs. Alien art began to flourish again for the first time in millennia. Scientific research accelerated as curiosity and wonder supplemented pure logical analysis. Social problems that had persisted for centuries were solved by leaders who finally cared about their people's well-being. The galaxy that had once dismissed humanity as too emotional had become more human than anyone thought possible. And in helping heal the psychological wounds of entire civilizations, humans had proven that their greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their capacity to feel and to help others feel as well.